Hello friends, this is Scott, and it's August 6th today. I'm down at the hobby farm. I've been here for a couple days, and most of what I've been doing is dragging hose around the yard. Got to keep everything watered. Regular maintenance. The garden has been in full production. But I talked a lot about weeds in the past and how big of a problem certain weeds like bindweed or morning glory, as they call it, are. But my biggest issue right now is insects. I mean, it is amazing. When you look from the urban setting to the rural setting, I get aphids in Salt Lake once in a while, and I get a few earwigs, and it's not, it's generally not the big deal. A few slugs and snails, easy to take care of. Well, when you're out here in the country, you're dealing with all kinds of insects that you're not used to, and the amount of insects is just incredible. So, I've got insects I don't even know what they are, but again, they've attacked the garden, particularly grasshoppers and earwigs and those type, and even through it all, I think we've been able to collect quite a bit of produce out of the garden this year. So I do call it a hobby farm now because we're actually producing something. So I'm going to show you a little bit, bounce it around a little bit, but I want to show you the insects that I'm facing and the amount of problems that they're giving me. And I want to show you the amount of harvest that we've got. So I'm not disappointed with the harvest. I'm pretty pleased, and we still have more to come. We have beans and corn still that haven't come into production yet, but the beans are very close. So anyway, the bugs have been bad, but even with the bugs, we've been able to persevere and collect some produce out of the hobby farm. So I'm real excited about that. And it's funny when you look at insects and the plants that do get affected versus the ones that don't. I'm going to show you a little garden tour of what has been affected and what really doesn't seem to have been affected at all up to this point, especially by grasshoppers. I thought grasshoppers were going to eat everything. That's not really the case. They have their favorite plant, and I'm going to show you what that plant is. So stay tuned. Let's take a look at the type of insects and the produce that we've harvested here, and take a final look at the garden, at least for today, and see where we're at, what we got to look forward to. Before delving into the negatives of the insects, let's talk about the positives. First crop, we had great peas, and there was no bug pressure, so that was nice. And the garlic, which we planted last fall, had no bug pressure either, and neither did the radishes. We had a sizable onion crop, and again, no insect problems with those. And we had pretty good broccoli and cauliflower, which we were able to freeze some. And the cabbage moths were out and about, but yeah, we still had some nice cabbage. We still have some left to pick, and as you see, it's very, very nice inside, no damage. And we have our crookneck squash and our zucchinis, and we've had quite a few of those. And we have some butternut squash that's going to be coming out here shortly. And we have harvested a few potatoes, not the full crop yet, but we're still waiting. But here is a look at our big nemesis, number one, which is the grasshoppers. And this is a look at how the potatoes looked about a month ago, and when the grasshoppers were just moving into town. And now let's take a look at what they look like now and how many grasshoppers there are. It's amazing. There's just hundreds and thousands of grasshoppers. And this is the plant that the grasshoppers prefer. They love potatoes. And so they're all over the place. I mean, you'll find them in every crop I've got, but they're only decimating the potatoes. And I think they came along late enough that I don't think that's going to affect the potatoes that much. I'll be digging potatoes soon. As you see, they've chewed off most of the leaves. But have a little bit of help since bringing the chickens down here. We've got a few hunters in the group. And yeah, they're catching some grasshoppers, and they just kind of kill them and swallow them whole and move on to the next. But they're not very efficient. They'll get a couple grasshoppers here and there, but there's just hundreds to thousands of grasshoppers. So yeah, they're not going to be doing a lot of good, but they help a little bit. Still have cabbage moths flying around, but they didn't seem to bother the broccoli, cauliflower, and cabbage too much. As you see, they get a little bit competitive, so when one catches one, the dumber ones want to chase them around and try to steal them. But yeah, they're helping until their stomachs are full, and then they kind of move off and do their own thing. And with chickens, when you let them out in the garden, it's kind of a double-edged sword, because they will take on insects, good and bad insects, but they also take a liking to certain types of produce. And when plants are pretty mature, they're not going to do too much to them. But there are some plants that you want to definitely plant in different places where the chickens have no access to, which I'm going to show you here in just a minute. And peppers are one. They seem to love green peppers, and they
I've only had one green pepper so far because chickens have got the rest. And they're also getting the low-hanging tomatoes. And so I don't mind if they get a few tomatoes. Not a big deal. Now going on to insect number 2. What do you think's causing this kind of damage on the leaves? It just turns them into skeletons. And this is the signature of a certain type of insect, and that is an earwig. And so there's a close-up of an earwig that made it into the house. As you can see there, yeah, when you have one, not a big deal. But when you have thousands, which I have throughout this entire yard, it's a terrible year for insects. And, earwigs are just everywhere. There's just thousands and thousands of them. But, yeah, I started going after them with a little bit of chemicals here, and you see them pouring out of the nest. And so, yeah, they're right next to the chicken coop, and the chickens would, snag a few of those, but I got to be careful with the poison. I don't want the chickens eating bugs that have any poison around them. So at the end of the gardening season, I'll be doing a lot of spraying, it looks like. But the biggest problem with earwigs is they get inside your produce. Now, they don't eat the produce, okay? Like in Salt Lake, I get them into my peaches, and they'll eat the pits, but they don't eat the peach. These earwigs just get up into the broccoli and the cauliflower and the cabbage, and they just live in there. And you got to soak everything you pick. You got to just stick it in a tub of water, and pretty gross. But again, they're not hurting the quality of the produce. Now here's another bug that I haven't dealt with before, and these must be squash beetles. These little gray critters. I've not had squash beetles ever be a problem in my gardens, and so down here though, they're here, and so yeah, I've got to do a little more research on these and see what I can do. But yeah, they're going to cause all kinds of hate and discontent with this zucchini plant, and I don't think this plant's going to live very long. As you see a cluster of eggs on the bottom there, but they're just everywhere. And I think I'm going to burn my produce at the end of the year, all the spent plants, or give them, I give them to the chickens, but whatever's left, I think I'm just going to burn it just to try to kill whatever insects might be in the materials and the earwigs and everything else that I put in my compost bins. Yeah, I think that's what I'll do. Now, the next pest are flies. Now, flies aren't going to hurt your garden particularly, but they, when you have poultry and you have cows and horses, you get flies. As you see, they're just all over the place. They get in the manures and they just reproduce. So I bought a couple of these fly traps. They just, all you do is you fill them with water and put in a stinky pack of stuff. Don't know what it is, but it's pretty stinky. And as you can see, it catches thousands and thousands of flies. And I've dumped this out a couple times, so I've had these up for a couple weeks, and it's just amazing how many flies. But I don't have a lot in my house, and I don't have a lot by my house because I put them by the chicken coop, and I put another one over by the deck. And it's catching quite a few of the flies so that I'm not having to deal with them. I do have my electronic fly swatter, which is pretty satisfying, so I'm getting better with that. Now, insect number 3 that's causing me trouble right now are wasps and hornets. Now, they're getting into my gates, and that's dangerous. I've been stung more times slinging gates open and shut and banging them, and this is right by the entrance gate, and they're right in the gate itself, going in every little nook and cranny. So I've got to get some spray real quick and get down here and before I forget about them, because I'm going to slam this gate one of these days, or one of the gates, and I'm going to get stung. I've been stung 3 times in Salt Lake, but surprisingly enough, down here, I've never been stung. Now, here's a look at what's left. I've got some, kale that's still looking good. I got a couple heads of cauliflower that are still there that I left on. I've been feeding the plants after I pick. I'm just giving them to the chickens, put them in their pen, and they like to eat the leaves. And they'll eat whatever insects are in there, too. Again, the zucchini and crickneck are still there, but I forgot to mention tomatoes. Tomatoes have not come on yet, but they're looking great, and I should have a ton of tomatoes. So, yeah, as long as it doesn't freeze on us, we should have a bumper crop of tomatoes. And then I did put some wire around these plants, try to keep the chickens out of my peppers, which are right there. I apologize for my shadow. It's kind of a bad time of day, but I have eggplant and hot peppers and green peppers in there, and hopefully I can keep the chickens out. Now, we are going to get a little sweet corn. Again, the germination was not great, so I had to replant, and so we have corn at all different phases. So, yeah, some is tasseled out, and there's a couple ears forming. I'll show you here one ear in a minute. But, yeah, we should get a little bit of corn. I don't know how it's going to pollinate, but, yeah, we'll get what we get, and that's just what it is. But, yeah, it's fun to have a little sweet corn in the garden, and there's my nemesis, number 1. The grasshoppers are in here, but they're, they nibble on the leaves a little bit, but they're not decimating any crop. The only crop they've decimated so far is the potatoes, and they like the white potatoes best. Got way too much shade on this side of the yard, and I've got to do some heavy pruning and before I start growing in here, or I can just grow more shade-loving plants in here like lettuces and spinach and things that don't like the heat. So those hard squashes, winter squashes, aren't doing much of anything. So that was kind of a waste. I do have some sweet potatoes there that aren't doing much because of the shade either, but hopefully we'll get something out of them. And then those are two types of beans. One's a yellow wax bean, and the other one's it's a European bean. It's a hard bean. You let dry on the plant, and you harvest it for the hard beans. But what I am having success with are my green beans. They're looking wonderful. There's grasshoppers in here, but again, the grasshoppers, as you see, the potatoes on the top of the screen there are decimated, but we have beautiful green bean plants, and the beans are just starting to produce. So I haven't picked any yet, but I should have a bumper crop of green beans, so I'm pretty excited. So anyway, the bugs are here. The bugs are a pain in the butt, but they're not keeping me from having a nice harvest so far, and we'll see what we have left that we can harvest. And I hope that the grasshoppers move on. Or once the potatoes are gone, I wonder what they're going to end up turning to. So I really don't want to pick my potatoes. I just want to let the grasshoppers stay in there and keep eating those versus my other crops. Well, thanks for watching this video, and I could really use your support in getting a subscription if you like this channel. Thank you.